With spring 2025 being a very lackluster season, I'm looking at you, you pile of dog shit. I can safely say with this current season, we are so back, baby. Dandadan is one anime that's airing this season, originally a manga made by Yukinobu Tatsu of the same name. This series is heavily, and I mean heavily, reminding us, yes us, you and me, that the only companionship we have is a toaster bath combo. Dandadan is a perfect example of why I love anime. If you aren't watching it, or God forbid, have never heard of it, then please get onto it pronto. Did I stutter? Why are you still here? The series follows our two protagonists, Ayase Momo and Takakura Ken, in their quest to find his balls. Yes, I'm not joking, but to make a bit more sense of it, let's take it back a bit. To keep it brief, Momo believes in ghosts and spirits, while Ken, aka Okarun, believes that aliens and the supernatural exist, and neither one believes that the other exists. This, whatever this is, gets to a boiling point to where they both try to prove that the supernatural thing they believe in exists. So as any normal functioning human being, one goes into an abandoned building said to have had aliens spotted there, and the other goes to a supposed haunted tunnel. And what do you know, in trying to prove that one exists and the other doesn't, in a crazy turn of events, it turns out that both do in fact exist, and they aren't the most friendly people you could come across. Momo gets abducted and that, and Okarun gets possessed by a dick-eating old granny. But somehow, Okarun's cursed body is able to teleport from his phone into her phone with the goal of trying to save her, but he can't really do shit. But this event caused Momo to unlock her hidden potential and gain access to her powers. I promise you, this was kind of foreshadowed in the beginning. It was her grandma that was getting her to subconsciously build up her spiritual energy that led to these events. They beat the aliens, the spaceship blows up, and now they need to do something about Okarun's curse. Look, for an opening to a series, this is easily one of the most unique and batshit insane beginnings to an anime I've ever seen. And that unique feeling is so entertaining that this is easily one of the best starts to an anime. The likes that rival Attack on Titan for different reasons, but I don't say that lightly. Over the past few years, the battle shonen genre has been changing. The formula that worked back in the day seems to be getting more and more lost as time goes on. Shows like Jujutsu Kaisen or even Chainsaw Man, while you can tell they had been inspired by a former generation of shonen, they're so fundamentally different to what came before. And this also applies to Dandadan. It's so random you can't help but admire that aspect. It's such a roller coaster of fun you can't help but be entertained. Depending on whether you think this is a good thing or not is completely up to you, but for me, I think this recent shift in the shonen genre is great. I feel like there's a lot more creativity and freedom in this new gen of anime, and I can't wait to see what more it has to offer. And with that being said, I feel Dandadan does this best. Anything is possible in this anime. It's one of those rare cases that with every episode it has me audibly going, what the fuck is going on? The only anime I can think of that's exactly like this is Gintama. And if you've watched Gintama, you know exactly what I mean. If I had to describe Dandadan in one word, it would be charming. Despite how insane the world is and what would normally be very fucking traumatizing to the average person, that doesn't stop all of these different characters from being the most fun and eccentric people I've seen in a while. And because of how effortless they feel, you can't help but root for them. Even the unlikable characters who realistically you shouldn't like, but sometimes I'll be watching and be like, you know who I miss? This bitch. While this show does follow a linear storyline and I guess has an overarching goal, finding Okarun's balls, this show isn't afraid to take its time. It can easily go from life-threatening stakes where they're scraping by barely to more of a slice of life where you just see these people living their lives. Dandadan trusts that it has your full engagement, so sometimes scenes will just play out and all you can do is think to yourself, wow, this is peak. This to me is really important because a problem I've had with shonen for a while, and I guess this doesn't necessarily just apply to the genre, is that sometimes I feel like we're not given enough time to just enjoy these characters. We'll go from arc to arc, non-stop, with no breathers, and that's not bad of course. And maybe this is just me, but sometimes after these really intense episodes, I just want a breather where you can see these guys just living their life. And what I mean by this is that in most shonen, you don't really get scenes where people just talk. Of course, you'll see them talking about what's going on in the current arc or what the next plan of action is, but that's not what I mean. I mean just talking for the sake of talking. Just watching two characters banter with each other simply because they have that sort of relationship where they can do that. Reminding us why these people are friends in the first place. This is something I find myself wanting from these anime. When I think of Bleach, sure, I think about how cool the Soul Society arc was or how Ichigo is his generation's Sigma Aura farmer, but sometimes I find myself thinking about the beginning of the series where they're just chilling on Earth. Nothing too crazy is going on, it's just people going about their daily life with these weird ass monsters coming every now and then. Or One Piece. Yeah, right now it's batshit insane with all these mysteries being unraveled, and it's just been constantly good for its entire run, but sometimes I find myself missing the crew just vibing on the boat doing whatever. Dandadan reminds me of those early episodes where we see people just genuinely enjoying each other's company, and it does a great job at balancing these elements to where you get just enough slice of life elements to be satisfied, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. And when you get into the more action intense elements, we find ourselves caring more about these characters because of all that buffer time we've had in between the action. Tone wise, it is all over the place, but for some reason this show does a really good job of it not feeling out of place. One episode you'll have this bitch trying to exercise Momo thinking she's a demon with one of Okudun's balls, and the next episode you'll have this emotionally powerful episode strong enough to make even the toughest of tough weebs bawl their eyes out. And the animation, the animation is fantastic. Usually when I get this invested into a series and it's not finished, more than likely I'd pick up the manga, but this series is so beautiful whether it be normally or action wise, and not only that, the animation makes these characters feel so alive and full of personality. With the added bonus of having a collection of talented voice actors, I can't see myself picking up the manga with just how good this anime is. And since we're on the topic of characters, I thought it's time I bring up the number one reason for watching this series. There is a character in Dandadan that is so perfect, so youthful, a character that brings me to awe every second they are on screen. And I mean this with no exaggeration whatsoever, and that character is none other than the grandma. Seiko, or Mummy Seiko, is what happens when you try to force worldly norms onto someone, but then they just kind of go, nah, I'ma do my own thing. Because how on earth is this woman, wait, hold up. Okay, yeah, they're just taking the piss at this point. How is this woman a grandmother? Did she pull a Roswell and try and transfer her consciousness into her daughter? Look, whatever the reason, she is the best thing to be blessed into this series, and to show you how serious I am, I thought I'd describe to you all what I would do if she was right in front of me for the very first time. If I found myself alone in a room with Mummy Seiko, I would start off by being the most respectful person to ever be alive. I would treat her with the kindness she deserves, making sure she's okay and asking her how everything's been. My main goal is to be as gentlemanly as possible because that's exactly what she deserves. And if I found that she had her hair down just like in Season 2, Episode 6, timestamp 58 seconds, then I would tell her that she's very beautiful in the most respectful way possible. I would then shower her with gifts and appreciation while maintaining a dignified manner. Okay. So, back to the characters being great. They are definitely the backbone of this series. If the characters weren't as enjoyable as they are, then this series wouldn't be anywhere near as good as it is. Don't get me wrong, the whole mystery with the aliens and the yokais being interconnected for some reason, and how interesting the whole mythology of it is, but I feel that it's just elevated that the ones experiencing this are the most stupid, brain-dead people on this earth. Like, genuinely in this scene, Okudun, who has absolutely no fighting experience whatsoever, is the biggest nerd alive, managed to beat the evil eye, who is strong as fuck, easily being one of the strongest foes we've seen so far. He beat him by doing a bunch of squats. And to those who are thinking, huh? Trust me when I tell you this? Here, let me get a bit closer. This scene was so hype, it turned me gay. I'm homosexual now. It feels so special because the characters on their own are good, but the dynamic each character has with one another just heightens their good qualities. This also correlates to my previous point on how the series takes its time and lets us enjoy the characters bantering. And sometimes it's so subtle but so powerful you can't help but appreciate it. The way Momo talks to Okudun in such a soft voice compared to someone like Gigi. The way Okudun is very awkward to others and his voice is very sharp and stiff, but you see the more he spends time with them, you can tell he starts to loosen up. The way Gigi just exists. No, but in all honesty, this guy is so lovable. At first I found him slightly annoying because he's the biggest goofball known to man, and you see that instantly. But you can't help it. The next thing you know, you are just vibing to his very eccentric personality. I can remember the exact moment I started liking him, and it wasn't because he did something cool or he showed a side of him that made me like him more. No, it was the scene of the gang going up a bunch of stairs to Gigi's haunted house, and you see Momo and Okudun just struggling. Like, these are some long ass stairs that feel never ending, but then you just see this doofus just vibing the fuck out, and I just couldn't help but laugh at how stupid it was. The more you learn about him, especially in the second season, the better you start to understand him. The guy would rather have an evil spirit inside him forever, despite how much of a risk it is. He could end up killing someone. Up until recently, it was forever inconvenient for him because he couldn't ever touch cold liquids. And he went through all this because he didn't want to kill this spirit. Is it selfish of him? Yes, 100%. But me personally, I admire that simple-minded, almost childlike innocence and just wanting to make sure no one dies, not even an evil spirit. And the anime is very subtle about about it, but you can tell just how much of a toll it was taking on him. You can tell just from the small glances he was making, he was genuinely terrified that he was going to kill one of his close friends. And what they ended up doing with this plotline, I loved so much. It not only made me understand Evil Eye more, but it also helped develop some of the other characters, specifically Okurun, in many different ways, especially with fighting. Now, you can't make a Dandadan video without talking about this one aspect that it does better than any battle shonen: romance. This is by no means a hot take to say that Dandadan has the best romance in all of battle shonen, because quite frankly, it really isn't a thing in this genre. What I mean by this is that even if a show does have romance in it, it's either shit or it just doesn't exist up until the very end of the series, where for some reason or another the author slaps these characters together who've had the slightest hint of potentially getting together. Whether it be one liking the other but the other's too busy fighting for their life to realize this, or just because the author wanted them to get together. It's interesting too because I feel like shipping culture is pretty big in this genre for some reason. It's pretty common to find comments on people's opinions on who a certain character should end up with, despite how low of priority romance usually is in this genre. My Hero Academia might be an outlier in this, but I swear whenever I saw posts on My Hero, the comments were always talking about which character should end up with who, despite it arguably having objectively horrible romance. Even the big shows from the past, Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, these shows have little to no romance, with the exception of a couple characters having crushes on each other. You can tell the mangakas didn't really care for romance and were more interested on fights and action. This is where Dandadan comes in and completely flips all this on its head. From my experience, I never thought it was possible. I always considered shonen and romance to be so far apart from each other that there's no way we'd actually see a good romance form through a battle shonen. But this guy did it. And when you actually take a deep dive into this, you'd find that the mangaka of Dandadan basically went to romance bootcamp, consuming a variety of different romances and implementing what he learned into his own story. Momo and Okurun are how you do romance right. I could go through a whole list of reasons why they're so good together, but for now I'll focus on the main one that every battle shonen lacks to some degree. It's their chemistry together. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Dandadan characters are so expressive and their banter with each other makes us care for them more, as this aspect makes them feel alive. Bottom line, every single character has chemistry with each other one way or another. And Momo and Okurun are the two protagonists who have the most chemistry with each other. When you watch them on screen together, you genuinely believe that they care for each other. They rely on each other as friends and as partners in spiritual crime. They aren't perfect and again are stupid kids, so obviously they don't know how to handle their emotions. They get jealous, insecure, they hide things from each other because it's embarrassing. Yet the more you watch them become closer, the more the relationship improves. With each arc, they're slowly growing more mature. And so far we've reached to a point where they've held hands for the very first time. With some emotes as well, I guess. Hell, a couple hours ago they were fighting for their lives. When I tell you the minute they started holding hands, I audibly went, yes! Hell yes, boys, we've made it! They've practically fucked. The series does something barely any shonen have been able to capture. The series makes it believable. Okurun had a choice. He could have easily not gone and talked to Momo when she defended him against those bullies in his class. But for someone who's never had any friends, been so lonely to the point you'd given up and resorted to trying to find aliens to see if they'll become friends with you, the courage it would have taken for him to go out of his way and try again and talk to this stranger would have been insane. And sure, he lost his penis, but at least he gained a friend. Am I right? Look, the characters are amazing, it's weird but unique, but honestly that's what we need. We need some weird ass shit that goes, you know what? I'm going to have the most wacky and unusual events occur in this series that'll leave you wanting more. And yeah, it does just that. Like genuinely, they could do just about anything and somehow make it entertaining. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leaving a like would mean a lot, and if you're new here, subscribing would be appreciated. If you haven't watched Dandadan, then please watch it.